This excerpt from the public television program, The Piano Guy, is brought to you by the Roland Corporation. I'm going to work through today a tune that was made famous by a group called Captain and Tennille. It's called Love Will Keep Us Together. Now, this is kind of a tune that you know, the minute you hear it, you immediately lock into the recording that was the famous recording of the tune. But rather than try to imitate that recording perfectly, what you need to do first, that's kind of the second step down the pike. The first step is to actually get the tune learned, the melody line, and what the chord changes that are underneath that melody line are. So that's what we're going to work through today. We're going to go through the real basics of this tune, just the skeleton, if you will, of what's the melody line and what are the chord changes. So to do that, we're going to use a lead sheet, which of course is our preferred method of getting through non-classical tunes. The melody line to this tune could not be a better example of the point that we make quite often of not wanting to play something exactly as notated. You know, if you turn on your metronome and you count and 1 and 2 and 4 and 2 and 3. I mean, it just sounds so stilted and so silly and so robotic. Of course, that's not the way you would ever really want to play. So you need to use the lead sheet notes, the printed notation. It's just a guide to kind of let your ear do its real job, which is to play something the way you remember it being sung. So, you know. You know, whatever. Now you noticed a couple times I was sliding a little bit there. Again, that's some stylistic stuff, but it's almost impossible for me not to do that as I'm trying to hear the melody in my head going through. And you know, the way I just played it probably is not the way you remember it perfectly. So the key here is to, you know, turn it into a real piece of music, not a little, you know, reproduced robotic thing from the lead sheet, because I'll tell you, a lead sheet will never do the melody line justice in a tune like this. So work your way through, get that learned, and get the melody line underhand. Now let's shift to the other side of the coin and look at the chord changes in this tune. Now, it's going to sound a little odd because this had such an identifiable kind of a riff, that kind of a thing. But again, we're going to kind of not pay attention to that now and really get to the harmony, the structure that was underneath those things, and just stick to those chords. So for that reason, it's pretty straightforward. It starts out on an F chord, goes to what's called a A minor 7 flat 5 or a half diminished. We talk about all those time. It's kind of a mouthful, but here's what that is. What it is an A minor 7, which is that chord, A, C, E, and G, and then you take that top note and you go down a half step, you flat the 5th. So there's that chord. Now, you know, I should mention as we're working through these, here's a D7. If you've never gone through any of this before and you're seeing this for the first time, I strongly suggest learning your chords by looking up chord diagrams. You can find them in chord books or online or in these really handy little electronic chord finders. It's kind of the way guitar players, you know, learn their chords with those fret charts. I think it's a tremendously, you know, deep and meaningful way to learn your chords, and I really mean that, because it's all about, you know, what notes am I supposed to play? What's the target practice of getting this chord underhand? And looking them up in diagrams as opposed to looking at a chord fully notated is, in my mind, the right way to get that accomplished. Now, the great news is, once you learn some chords, you learn them for life. It's kind of like riding a bicycle. You never forget how to play it. So once you've done that, understand that as you keep learning a few more chords every time you get to a new tune, your whole snowball of knowledge just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So understand, again, if this is the very first time you've ever done anything like this, the first tune you play is going to be by far the most difficult. And from that point on, you just kind of keep building up and learning more chords. So moving on. There's a B flat chord, there's a B flat minor chord, another F. Now there's an augmented, that's one you might not have played. All you do is you take the regular F chord, F, A, C, and you raise that top note. That augments it. Then you go to an F6, which is an F chord with that D added. Then to an F7. So if you hear those four in order, and again, that's a classic case of letting your ear be your guide, you'll recognize this in an instant from this tune. It goes F. You just hear it. Well, that's what that is accomplishing. Augmented, 6th, 7th, and up. Now here's a case of a slash chord. You know, it's funny, lots of times musicians, they refer to slash chords, and what I'm talking about is where you'll see right there, we have a G minor 7 that says slash C. Lots of times when musicians describe a slash chord, they say G minor 7 over a C, and it makes a lot of sense, you know, I guess, to comprehend it when you think of it that way, because here's how you play a slash chord. You play whatever the chord is that's on the left side of the slash, and then you play it over what's ever on the right hand of the slash. So in this case, you play a G minor 7 chord over a C in the bass, or here. Now how you get that accomplished, you can do it a couple different ways. You just, in some way, need to figure out either you can reach down, play it, or do it with two hands, or if you have really giant fingers, you can do it like that. I wouldn't really suggest that. So that's how you get through a slash chord. Working on through, there's a D flat, we haven't had that one. And then finally, the last one is something called a C sus4, and that's what that chord is. It's a regular old C major chord with the middle note raised a half step. So that's it. So now the trick is to put it together. Now what I would suggest for you absolute beginners is maybe just trying to play the root with your left hand. And what I mean by that is just the letter name of the chord symbol. Instead of playing the whole chord, just play the letter name by itself, and it might be a little simpler at the beginning. So it would sound like this. And again, the whole intent here is to really get your brain hearing where these chords should move every time. Okay, now I'm going to start playing the full chord just to give you... Now here's that slash chord. However you want to play that, like they would sing it. All right? Just to play just a couple measures through the bridge, it goes... Pretty straight ahead. There's that sus chord. I just wanted to get to that point. Back to the top. Now, again, obviously, when you play like this, that is not the hippest, most polished version of a tune you've ever heard in your life, but that's not really the intent here. The intent is to really, again, just it's almost like learning how to spell words sometimes before you use them fluently in a sentence. You want to really get this tune internalized. You want to know what the chord changes are and what the melody line is, so then you have this great bass to work from when you start really adding some spice and some tips and tricks to it. So, have fun. Try to get Love Will Keep Us Together underhand, and hopefully we'll hear you playing this tune long in the future. This excerpt from the public television program, The Piano Guy, has been brought to you by the Roland Corporation, international manufacturer of the finest keyboards, organs, and digital pianos. To find out more, log on to RolandUS.com.